This is Answer Me That on Storm FM, sponsored by Bar Uno.
Hello and welcome to Answer Me That on Storm FM.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM. Send your questions to studio@stormfm.com, facebook.com/stormamt, or text Storm plus your message to 60300. Text charged at your standard network rate.
So that's how to get into contact with us today to tell us what your worst and best presents ever received were. Don't worry, we'll try and keep them anonymous if you want them to. So our first question today is, what is acid reflux? Basically, acid reflux is when the acid content from your stomach flows up into the esophagus and into the gullet, which moves the food down from the mouth. The esophagus is hard to pronounce, especially when you're tired, and I've been terrible with words this week. But it's the pipe which goes basically from your mouth down to your stomach, and when the acid comes up the esophagus, it starts to erode it and makes you feel ill and things like that. So the best way to get rid of acid reflux is to take something which is more neutral or more of an alkali. So avoid your fruits and acidic foods and try and drink things such as milk or water, or just take antacids, which is the easiest way to do it. So that was our first question for the day. There's not really much to say on that other than eat healthy. Speaking of eating healthy, that is one of our other questions of today. So why is exercise good for you? It's not just exercise, it's keeping healthy in general. So I say so a lot, don't I? If you eat the right food, so having a balanced diet, making sure you have your fruit, your veg, your meat, your carbohydrates and all the rest of it is very important. But with people who diet, they often forget about the good sugars you can have and what a term does. Good fats, even though technically there are no such thing as good and bad fats, they're just fats. But it's all needed in your diet to keep your body healthy, and the reason for this is it keeps your immune system up, so it stops you from getting ill and things like that. But one thing a lot of people don't consider is the effects it can have on your mental health. So if you're not having enough of certain foods, it will stop your synapses, which are parts of the brain which need to fire electrical impulses between one another. It can stop them firing properly, which can cause depression due to a lack of serotonin and things like noradrenaline and things which are needed to keep the body healthy and your mind healthy. So when you're keeping fit, it's all about trying to keep everything healthy and not just looking good. This is affected by your diet, the amount of exercise you have, and generally your day-to-day living. So if you don't get exercise, it can reduce the amount of chemicals your body releases. This also comes down to the amount of sunlight you have, because you need to have vitamin D and things like that. And without sunlight, you will get pale, you will feel ill, you will feel drained. So it's important to get out and exercise and do more than just sitting on video games or visiting the gym. You actually need to have a healthy, balanced lifestyle to be able to live, basically.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM. Send your questions to studio@stormfm.com, facebook.com/stormamt, or text Storm plus your message to 60300.
Hello and welcome back. So our next question now is, how do we know there are 7 colours in the rainbow? So this all comes from the visible spectrum, which is an electromagnetic spectrum, which is visible to the human eye. It's electromagnetic radiation in a range of wavelengths, which we know as visible light. So this passes through your optical nerves, and different brain cells interpret it as different colours. And that's partly why some people see colours slightly differently and some people are colourblind. It's because it goes into the electromagnetic spectrum, goes into your eye and is interpreted by different brain waves. So every person's unique in the way in which their brain functions. So some people are colourblind, some people see colours as slightly brighter. But anyway, this was originally studied by people like Sir Isaac Newton, who wrote a book about it. And basically what people like him and other scientists discovered is the electromagnetic spectrum is made up of multiple colours, and these multiple colours make up what we know as normal or white light. So it's actually near impossible to have properly white light. What we see is a mixture of colours, and this has been split up. If you actually get a crystal and shine a torch or laser through it, it will split it up into the different colour beams. So you have red, orange, yellow, green, green, blue, indigo and violet. Something in school you taught as Roy G. Biv, but that is basically what white light is made up of. And what a rainbow is when there's precipitation or moisture in the air, and the sunlight is hitting these raindrops and the moisture and being split up into their spectral form. So what you see as a rainbow is just split up normal light. Maybe something you can ask us another time is, where does the saying there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow come from? Because it doesn't seem to fit in much with the splitting up of light rays and electromagnetic waves and things like that. But that's a bit of a sciencey answer for you. But we've had another question. Where does coffee come from? And I'm going off the top of my head here, so forgive me if I get this wrong. But it's just caffeine beans. So these beans are picked in hotter countries because they tend to grow better in more sunlight. And then they are laid out to dry. And after they've dried for a while, they get bagged up. There is other bits in the process as well, but basically they dry out, get bagged up, and then shipped wherever, at which point they are ground down and sent off to be made into coffee. And so the caffeine comes from the cocoa bean, which it originally comes from. Anyway, I'll try and get you some proper answers for the next questions, but that's what I know off the top of my head.
You're listening to Answer Me That on Storm FM. Don't forget to send your questions to facebook.com/StormAMT.
So our next question is one about lollipop ladies. Now, when you've gone to school and things, you've probably noticed that on the lollipop there's a big black bit in the middle, which doesn't seem to have any practical use nowadays. But originally this black strip was painted with black chalk paint, and it was put there so the lollipop lady could record the numbers of any car which didn't stop or was going too fast past them and things like that. So originally it was a safety measure, and now it's just kept there as part of a convention. Like most things nowadays, it has no practical use, just looks pretty. So that's why there's a horizontal black line on a lollipop lady sign. And one of our other questions has been, how does hand cream work? So I'm going to go a bit more into this, but I've taken that to mean moisturizers and things like that. So the idea of these is they will put the moisture back into your skin and what's allegedly called rejuvenate them. So there's not much science actually in terms of moisturizers and things like that. And there is, when companies say they are hypoallergenic or allergy tested, there's actually no government standard for making these tests. So they could have done very little. They could have tested it extensively, but either way, we don't actually know definitively what they mean when they say that. And there's a lot of things they list, like vitamins and supplements and things, which we are taught to think is going to nourish your skin or going to fill it with antioxidants and get out all the badness. But in most cases, when you actually look at the moisturizers and what they are made up of, these are in such small concentrations they make little to no difference at all to what you're putting on your skin. All you're really doing is putting more moisture back into it, so it makes your skin a bit oily and it puts moisture back in. That's the top and bottom of what a moisturizer is. So you could just have a nice warm bath as long as you don't dry your skin out when you get out, and that would moisturize your skin better, because at the end of the day you're slathering yourself in oil. So that was our next two questions. Don't forget, we're still looking for more.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM, sponsored by Bar Uno.
So, following on from our last question, we've had another one, which is, why do our lips dry out in cold weather? During the cold weather, the cold air basically makes all the moisture condense, and that's why it rains a lot when it's colder. But it also takes that moisture out of the air. So when you're walking around, the air is actually quite dry, and it takes the moisture from your lips, drying them out even more. So our next question is, do cheap shoes offer less support Do cheap shoes give less support and break quicker than more expensive ones? I think you can't really give a definitive answer on this, because some cheap shoes are made to high quality standard, but in general, the more expensive shoes will have better padding and better insoles inside, so will give your foot better support, and they tend to be made out of better materials and there's more care taken over their stitching. So if you are going to buy new shoes, you're better off paying the little extra, because it is likely that they will last you longer. That's not true with all shoes, because most women will know, if you buy heels and things like that, get them stuck in a crack, they're going to break anyway. And some of the shoes which are made these days are made more to look pretty than to be durable. Same with most things, really. A few years ago, you could have brought a toaster which would last forever, and now they don't last 5 minutes most of the time. Anyway, on to our next question. Now this is one I can't really answer because there's not a lot of detail here, and it is a rather general one, but why is my car battery running flat after a week? So I'm guessing you've tried a new battery and it's not just a dodgy battery, but it could be that one of the circuits in the car is drawing electricity. So your best bet is to get a current meter or someone who's competent with electrical work and put it on the battery and pull the fuses one at a time to figure out which of the circuits is causing excessive drain. It could also be something plugged into a socket, so a cigarette lighter, which doesn't turn off when the car engine turns off, which will be constantly taking the current. If it was more than a week, then it could be the battery's just going dead because plastic does draw electricity and your battery does drain over time, and you do need to turn your engine over every now and again because of that. In short, it's probably worth going to see a mechanic, but if you've got the tools, try pulling the fuses and seeing if any of them does help. So our next song even is I See Love by Passenger, followed by Iridescent by Linkin Park. I really can't get my words out today, or this week even. I went to a conference the other day and I lost my train of thought and had to think for about what felt like 2 minutes.
You're listening to Answer Me That on Storm FM. Don't forget to send your questions to facebook.com/StormAMT.
So this is probably the last time you're going to hear from us today. But before I get on to our last question, it's probably important for you to get a bit of background on me. So in the past, I've been quite a quiet person and I don't necessarily like speaking to like small groups or classwork or presentations, stuff like that. I always used to try and hide from it. And then I joined the Students' Union where I was welfare officer, then VP, and then I was sabbatical president. And in those roles, I had to chair meetings, I had to give presentations, and I actually set up an awareness day and run it across a few campuses, and it gave me a bit more confidence. I still hated speaking to people. I was still nervous as hell whenever I had to do anything. But from there, I went on and I've spoken at quite a few conferences now, from NUS to the Voice of Child conference to the Association of Lawyers for Children annual conference to NIAS's annual conference. And yeah, I speak at a lot of things and do a lot of work. But anyway, I still sometimes get nervous and things like that, but I am finding it easier now. I'm not being funny. A few weeks ago, I was challenging the president of the Family Court Division, and I'll be doing it again in December. And I like to do that kind of work and things. But our question is, why do people get nervous when speaking, and why do they hate it? And I think it's partly down to the idea of so many people judging you, and if you say a wrong thing, who's going to come up and say you've said something wrong, or is someone going to make fun of you? And on the whole, people are generally impressed if you can stand up in front of people and give your view. I'm not being funny, NUS, that's a couple of thousand people. And yeah, there are one or two idiots, but in general, the crowd's going to turn around and back you up for having the confidence to go and speak about something. And if you are telling people about something you know, so I've done talks on self-harm awareness here in the university, and people are generally interested, and although I only had a small crowd for that, they seemed intrigued, they were leaning forward, and they were actually taking note, which feels good when you actually have the confidence to do it. But the people who don't, I think they fear being judged and what people might say or getting something wrong. It's just the whole crowd thing in general. It can be quite a daunting idea to someone. You know, you against so many people. It's not an attractive prospect. Anyway, that's our last question for today, and I hope I've satisfied your questions reasonably well. We're going to leave you with Clap Your Hands by Psy, followed by Lights by Beyonce Avenue. And until next week, don't forget to get your questions in. studio@stormfm.com. Use the, the subject line, AMT. Text Storm plus your message to 60300. Use the nifty little form on our website, or best of all, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/StormAMT. Don't forget, you can listen to past episodes on, you can look at past episodes on answermethat.tk. You can also have a look at all our contact details and things like that. And if you fancy coming on so I'm not speaking to myself, don't forget to go to our website. I know one of my friends would love to come on, but unfortunately she has to help me through Facebook instead. But get in touch, because it gets quite lonely talking to yourself all day. I do get to play the best music about, and I've been told that by numerous people. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully you've had a good reading week if you've had a reading week. If not, hopefully you haven't had too boring a time in work, school, college, whatever. And we'll be back with you next week. Don't forget to tune in, 1 o'clock on